Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Mormon Atheist. All right, apostate congregation, uh, it is Christmas Day, and I figured what better day to come to you than on a day you're probably just chilling at home, doing nothing, right? Presents are over, you're chilling. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays, all that kind of fun stuff. And we're going to get into a little bit of a Christmas episode. There's nothing really Christmassy about it. It's just on Christmas. So, uh, December 25th, 2025. All right. Mine is over. We are done. Everything is wrapped up. It was good. It was fun. All that kind of stuff. And I want to get going on this book. So we have kind of a lot to cover. So I'm off work today, so I figured I would bring it to the congregation. So here we go. This is going to be episode 12, chapter 10. Where we left off on the last episode, we're going to do kind of a little bit of a recap. Like and subscribe to the channel, all of you that are not subscribed already. And we will never be monetized. This channel will never be monetized. So the only way you can help this channel is to subscribe, like, share, all that fun stuff. Okay, so this is a series. Okay, this is an ongoing series. This is episode 12, chapter 10 of the series, and what we're doing is reading William Morgan's book, Illustrations of Masonry, and we are relating it to Mormonism. Okay, now the perspective here is the fact that this book was written in 1827, right? Well, it was published in 1827. It was written in 1826. It was published in 1827. This is the anti-Masonic movement that we are talking about, right? Okay. So what I'm saying is the anti-Masonic movement rolls into what we call the anti-Mormon movement, okay? And my proof of that is in the anti-Masonic literature, that what this channel is all about, right? Our time frame, you have to remember our time frame for, well, our this channel is all about Mormonism, is this channel, right? And the literature, okay? In the day contemporary to Joseph Smith. So I go to the late 1700s, the mid to late 1700s, to when Joseph Smith dies, right? And that's kind of the area that this channel focuses on. And then we go from his death to about 1890, and like full stop 1900. We do not ever go past 1900. We don't read any literature past that. Nothing. Nothing. So this channel's focus is the literature in Joseph Smith's day, which includes the anti-Masonic movement. Okay, and the correlations of Freemasonry in this day, right, and Mormonism are striking. Okay, and so you have to keep in the perspective of what we're talking about, right? So these books are a warning, right? These books are warning. We're talking about the anti-Masonic movement, right? They're warning us against this Masonic movement, right? So this Masonic movement, what the books are calling it, okay, is speculative Freemasonry, because operative Masonry, Masonry of old, which is the Templar Masonry, is dead. And so they're recreating this new thing called speculative Freemasonry. That's what these books are about. That's what the anti-Masonic movement is all about. And this speculative form of Freemasonry is a religious institution. Okay. And these books are telling us that this religious institution of Masonry is a bad thing, and we better stop it now. And this is in the 1827, right? Solomon Southwick, he's the creator of the anti-Masonic movement, and he is writing as early as 1805, okay? So he's warning us as early as 1805 against this religious institution of Masonry. Okay, and right off the bat, we have a Mormon correlation. Who was born in 1805? Okay. So we have this like constant correlation with anti-Masonry and Mormonism just in general, right? The whole, and these books are our window into that piece of time, right? So we praise these authors for preserving this literature for us, for, you know, this, they wrote this stuff down. And so William Morgan's book is a blueprint. His book is what kind of kicks off this particular movement. And I say that because there's previous anti-Masonic martyrs that are warning us against this religious institution previous to William Morgan, right? There's Henry Smith, there's Murdoch, there's Monroe, like the list goes on, right? These are martyrs that are warning us against this religious institution of Masonry that is being created, okay, in the late 1700s. And it just keeps growing, right, in America. And these books are warning us against that religious institution of Masonry. These books call it the Church of Masonry. Solomon Southwick and David Bernard both call it the Church of Masonry, okay? And David Bernard is in 1829, okay? So there's real relevance here to what I'm saying, right? Because the anti-Masonic movement is a real historical fact. In America, the anti-Masonic movement really did happen, right? Well, why did it happen, and what was it about? Okay? These are questions that we got to ask, right? And who was involved? That's also very important. Who was involved? Because all throughout my videos, Apostate Congregation, I tell you, you got to follow these names. Keep track of these names. These names will come up in places you completely do not expect. Okay? And these names are in anti-Masonic books, and all of a sudden, this same person, right? You can Google these names, and these same people legit end up as like presidents of Oberlin College in the 1800s, right? You know, you follow these names. That's just one example. There's many, right? Dr. Arvard, right? Who is Dr. Arvard? Dr. Arvard is all over these anti-Masonic books and what we call the anti-Mormon literature. All of these names are in the anti-Mormon literature. All of them are. And so there's real relevance to the point that I'm trying to make here, right? So I I want to be clear though, right? We are not talking about modern day Freemasonry in these videos, in this series. All right. I want to be very extremely clear about that. We are talking about 1827, the creation, okay, the restoration, right, of the creation of speculative masonry and the restoration of operative masonry. Okay, this is their words. This is what they call these things: the creation and the restoration. So that right there is what the entire anti-Masonic movement is all about, okay? And so as we progress in this, right, we ended our last video on page 57, and we were talking about the drapery on top of the pillars, right, the Yakin and Boaz, right, and what they represented, what they meant, the drapes, the pillars themselves, all that kind of stuff, right? And then we left off with where I was saying, "Oh my God, I was wrong," right? And so now we're picking up where we left off with the globes on top of the pillars, okay? So we were on page 57, and where we left off, this is where we left off in the last video, all right? It says, they also have two large globes or balls, one on each. And right there's where we stopped. Now we pick up again on page 57. These globes or balls contain on their convex surface all the maps and charts of the celestial and terrestrial bodies. They are said to be thus extensive to denote the universality of Masonry. Forgive me. My mason jar of water, apostates. Remember, every time they say masonry, we're very much talking about speculative. I want you to immediately, anytime you insert that word masonry, I want you to insert, or anytime you hear the word masonry, mason, free and accepted masons, immediately put the word speculative in front of that, okay? And that a mason's charity ought to be equally extensive. Their composition is molten or cast brass. Their composition is molten or cast brass, right? Here, when they're referring to these, they start referring to these metals, right? These metals have magical implications, okay? And so, again, I refer you to the YouTube channel Esoterica and Dr. Justin Sledge, right? He is a legit PhD scholar in esoterics, okay? And he has a magnificent set of videos on Salmonic magic and King Solomon. So I really refer you to him when it comes to explaining the magic, because he is a legit PhD scholar, and that stuff, even though I do read it and understand it, there is no way I could ever explain it the way he does. So, because he breaks it all down into a very comprehensive scholarly way, right? And so I recommend you go watch him for the magic, a super deep dive into the magic of Freemasonry, which is the magic of Solomon, right? Which today, me and you call Solomonic magic. Okay, let's keep going. They were cast on the River Jordan. Utah people, you know the Jordan River. They were cast on the Jordan River in the clay ground. Wow, isn't that crazy? I mean, what is the Jordan River, right? In clay ground. Between Succoth, Succoth, and Zaradatha, Zaradatha. Okay, let me read that again. We're talking about the globes, all right? The globes contain on their convex surface all the maps and charts of the celestial and telestial bodies. They are said to be thus extensive to denote the universality of Masonry, and that a Mason's charity ought to be extensive. Their composition is molten, right? Now we're talking about the globes, right? Their composition is molten or cast brass. They were cast on the Jordan River in the clay ground between Succoth and Zaradatha, where King Solomon ordered these and all their holy vessels to be cast. They were cast hollow and were 4 inches. I mean, they were 4 inches, right? We're, come on, the language, you got to think of this language. Think of, there's, all right. So anyways, or a hand breadth. And were 4 inches or a hand breadth thick, right? A hand breadth. What the hell's a hand breadth, right? You see, you got to remember they're creating this as they go, right? And that's what we're learning through this book, is they're legitimately, I mean, they say it over and over again. They repeat it over and over again. This is legitimately being created. As they speak, it's being created. They were cast hollow, better to withstand inundations and conflagrations. Conflagrations. Conflagrations, inundations, and conflagrations, where the archives of Masonry and contained the Constitution, rolls, and records. Okay, think Mormonism. The senior deacon, having explained the columns, has passed between them, advancing a step or two, observing as he advances, "Brother, we will pursue our travels. The next that we come to is a long, winding staircase with 3, 5, 7 steps or more. The first 3 allude to the 3 principal supports in Masonry: wisdom, strength, and beauty. The 5 steps allude to the 5 orders in the architecture, and the 5 human senses. Okay? The 5 steps allude to the 5 orders of architecture and the 5 human senses. The 5 orders in architecture are the Tucson, Tuscan, the Doric, Doric, the Ionic, Ionic, Corinthian, Corinthian, and composite, composite. The 5 human senses are hearing, seeing, feeling, smelling, and tasting. The first 3, of which have ever been highly essential among Masons: hearing, to hear the world. This is important, apostates. Pay attention. For those with ears to hear, the first 3, of which have ever been highly essential among Masons: hearing, to hear the world; seeing, to see the sign; feeling, to feel the grip, whereby one Mason may know another in the dark as well as in the light. The 7 steps, you got to pay attention to these words. Okay? The 7 steps allude to the 7 sabbatical years, 7 years of famine, 7 years in building the temple, 7 golden candlesticks, 7 wonders of the world, 7 planets, but more especially the 7 liberal arts and sciences, which are grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. For this and many other reasons, the number 7 has ever been held in high estimation among Masons. Okay, the number 7. Advancing a few steps, the senior deacon proceeds: brother, the next thing we come to is the outer door of the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple, which is partly open, but closely tiled, T-Y-L-E-D, tiled, by the junior warden. We have quotations. This is a footnote for Morgan. It is the junior warden in the South who represents the tiler, T-I-L-E-R, T-Y-L-E-R, that represents the tiler at the outer door of the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple. End quotations. Okay. Who on the approach of the senior deacon and candidate inquires, who comes here? Who comes here? Page 58. The senior deacon answers, a fellow craft mason, right? Remember from the last episodes, we went through what a fellow craft mason, right? A fellow craft mason is the magician. The craft is the magic of Solomon. Okay, we've established that in previous chapters, right? The junior warden or senior deacon. Wait, hold on. The senior deacon answers, right? A fellow craft mason. Junior warden to senior deacon. How do you expect to gain admission? Answer, by a pass, a token of a pass. Junior warden to senior deacon. Will you give them to me? Remember what the passes are, right? They're the handshakes. Or remember, there's slang for this stuff, and they told you what the slang was, right? And the slang was, they just refer to it as the pass, right? That was one of the shakes. That was the first shake, and then there's a second one that follows, right? And you have to do them. You have to do the shakes and say the words and hit the nail, all in order. Because if you don't do it in order, you're wrong, and you won't be recognized because you didn't do it in the proper order, right? And they won't answer you. You won't receive the answer in this process. Remember what happened to Joseph Smith, right? He gave the sign and nobody responded, right? Because he either didn't do the proper order, or he didn't do the proper sign to match what he was, his representation of who he was calling for what reasons, right? So nobody answered, and he got killed. The senior deacon or the candidate, prompted by him, that's quotations, the candidate, gives them this and many other tokens and grips, are frequently given by strangers. When first introduced to each other, if given to a Mason, he will immediately return it. They can be given by any company unobserved, even by Masons, when shaking hands. A pass and token of a pass. Remember these, the token pass, remember? The pass is the word shibboleth. The token, alas, the pass grip is given as before described. Remember, you got to go back and watch past videos. By taking each other by this right hand, as if shaking hands, and placing the thumb between the forefinger and the second finger at the third joint, or where attention. In the lecture, it is called a token, but generally called the pass grip. Okay, so now he's repeating it again. Okay, he's telling you the same thing. It is an undeniable fact that Masons express themselves so differently when they mean the same thing that they frequently wholly misunderstand each other. As the junior warden was received the pass, shibboleth, he inquires, what does it denote? Answer, plenty. Junior warden to senior deacon, why so? Answer, from an ear of corn being placed at the water ford. Junior warden to senior deacon, why was this pass instituted? In consequence of a quarrel which had long existence between Jephthah, Jeptha, right, I told you in past videos to keep track of these names, right? Because they keep coming up, and these names are context, right? Because they're out of the Bible. So in later writings in Bernard, and then when you get into especially the anti-Mormon literature, they really start giving you scripture quotes, and they start giving you the actual, passage number and stuff like that. And so you have to look that stuff up, right? And when we get into these other books, we're very much going to go into those because it's context. That is the context. And so unless you go and read those passages, you're kind of missing the point, right? So the Bible is extremely important in this entire process, right? And so what do you get in Mormonism, right? You get the Book of Mormon, and they're constantly referring you back to the Bible, right? It's a constant reference. So these similarities, right? There's just so many. And the thing is like there's no other religion that does this. This is not like there is no other religion that does this, right? So you can look up other religions, you can do all this stuff, right? And Mormonism is the only one that does this, right? So is this coincidence? Or is the religious institution of Masonry that the entire anti-Masonic movement is all about the legit LDS church today, right? And I get that through the literature, right? On this channel, Apostates, you know, because you're reading these books. You all are reading these books, congregation, and it's fascinating to me that, yeah, it's just really fascinating to me. So I really, truly thank all of you. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're going to this stuff gets so heavy. So once I finish this book out, right, you have to remember, Morgan's book is just kind of an introduction. His book is not finished. It doesn't get finished until David Bernard's book in 1829. But we have Southwick first, 1827, and he comes out swinging. He starts naming names. He starts putting stuff together, right? Because now the secret's out. Morgan's book is out. The secret's out. So Southwick jumps on that bandwagon. You got to remember, he's already writing in 1805. So this Morgan incident, the Morgan affair happens, and Southwick jumps on it and says, hell yeah, let's go. Right? And then that's when the movement really begins. That's when the political aspects take off, because the politics in this are so deep. There is real, legitimate implications, political implications. In the 1820s, that's why it became a political movement. The anti-Masonic movement became a political movement, right? Because they're running people for office. The speculative Masons are running people for office. Think of the Mormon story, right? Joseph Smith is running for office, right? And this movement is warning people against that, right? You better stop this now. And Bernard says in his book their candidate won. So the anti-Masonic movement basically died out, but it never ends. Historically speaking, it never ends. All of a sudden, this new thing called anti-Mormonism picks up, right? But the literature is the same. The words are the same. But now, instead of talking about Masons, we're talking about Mormons, right? And the Mormon, like in the 1830s and the 1840s, that literature is explosive in linking these two movements together, especially John C. Bennett. Mormonism Unveiled, right? Why do you think they're using those words, Mormonism Unveiled? Because you get unveiled in here in the process, right? It legitimately says it. You go through the veil, and he asks you, what do you see? Or what did you learn? Or something like that, right? So Mormonism Unveiled, right? These words have legitimate meaning, and through these words in the titles of the books, you can follow. There's a lineage, and it's in the titles of the books, it's in the language, it's in the wording, it's in the dates, it's in the names. Like, it's all here. And we're gonna, I don't know, I'm gonna rethink Southwick's book on how to do this. I don't know. Congregation, you comment and you tell me, do you like me reading it like this and then like commentary as we go? Or should I, like, because this is a lot of reading and it's a lot of episodes, and I don't know, and Southwick's book is 100 and, let's see, what is his book? His book is 140 pages long, is his book. Okay. But this writing is so incredibly small in this book. Yeah. Well, so that's the appendix. The book itself is 111 pages long. Okay. And then we have the appendix, and the appendix ends on page 140. And the appendix, the writing is extremely small. But the appendix is where all the juicy stuff is at, congregation. You all know that. Okay, we're 36 minutes in. Let's hit it. We got more to go. Let me get a drink of water. The mason jar of water. Okay. Where were we at? Okay. Here we go. Junior warden to senior deacon. Why was this pass instituted? In consequence of a quarrel, which had long existed between Jephthah, judge of Israel, and the Ephraimites, the latter of whom had long been a stubborn, rebellious people, whom Jephthah had endeavored to subdue by lenient measures, but to no effect. The Ephraimites, being highly incensed against Jephthah for not being called to fight and share in the rich spoils of the Ammonitish, Amonitish, the word, I want to point out the word monetize is in there. It's Amonitish, Amonitis. Monetize. I know that's not how you spell it, but an A and an H is the only difference. Okay, to share in the rich spoils of the Ammonitish war, assembled a mighty army and passed over the river Jordan to give Jephthah battle. But he, being apprised of the approach, called together the men of Israel and put them to fight. And to make his victory more complete, he ordered guards to be placed at the different passes, page 59, on the banks of the river Jordan, and commanded it the Ephraimites pass that way, that they should pronounce the word shibboleth. But they, being a different tribe, pronounced it Seboleth, right? They pronounced it wrong. They didn't pronounce it shibboleth. They pronounced it Seboleth, Seboleth. And you're supposed to say shibboleth, Shibboleth, which trifling defect proved them spies and cost them their lives. And there fell that day at the different passes on the banks of the river Jordan 42,000. I mean, think of that, 42,000. 42,000, right? I mean, once again, what does Mormonism have a problem with? Evidence, okay? This word was also used by our ancient brethren to distinguish a friend from a foe. Okay, we've already established this is being created. So they have no idea if this is true or not. They legitimately have no idea if their ancient brethren actually did this, because there's no record of any of it. That's what they're telling you, right? That's what these books are saying. These people are pretending. They call them pretenders later on, right? What was Joseph Smith called? A pretender, right? This word was used by our ancient brethren to distinguish a friend from a foe, and has since been adopted as a proper password, right? So here is another distinguishment between operative and speculative, right? The operatives are the Masons of old, the ancient, right? The speculative are the new, right? Us, we, our, okay? Free and accepted, all right? These are words, present day, present tense words, right? To be adopted as a proper password, to be given before entering any well-regulated and governed lodge as a fellow craft mason. Since this is the case, you will pass on to the senior warden in the West for further examination. As they approach the senior warden in the West, the senior deacon says to the candidate, "Brother, the next thing we come is to our inner door of the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple, which we find partly opened, but more closely tiled, Tyled, by the senior warden. When the senior warden inquires, 'Who comes here? Who comes here?' the senior deacon answers, 'A fellow craft mason.' Senior warden to senior deacon, How do you expect to gain admission? Answer, by the grip and word. The senior warden to the senior deacon, will you give them to me? There are then given, as herein before described, the word of Yakin. After they are given, the senior warden says, they are right. You can pass on to the worshipful, they are right. You can pass on to the worshipful master in the east. As they approach the master, he inquires, who comes here? Who comes here? Senior deacon answers, a fellow craft mason. The master then says to the candidate, brother, you have been admitted into the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple for the sake of the letter G. Okay, mark that. Do you understand me? You have entered the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple for the sake of the letter G. So far, that's the first time now we've seen the letter G, okay? Now, keep that in mind. Obviously, that's a big thing, all right? Because that's going to come up a lot, okay? And that's what that means. The master says to the candidate, brother, you have been admitted into the middle chamber of King Solomon's temple for the sake of the letter G. The middle of King Solomon's temple for the sake of the letter G, a fellow craft mason. Understand me, apostate congregation. Go to the channel Esoterica. It denotes deity before whom we all ought to bow in reverence, worship, and adore. You understand? Pay attention. It also denotes geometry, the fifth science. Remember the sciences, right? The seven sciences. Which one was the fifth? It being that on which this degree was principally founded. What is the fifth science? By geometry, we may curiously trace nature through her various windings to her most concealed recesses. By it we may discover the power, the wisdom, and goodness of the grand artificer of the universe. Right? Remember, who is the grand artificer of the universe? The Grand Master. And I don't mean the Grand Master as in like God, the Grand Master. The Grand Master of the Lodge. Remember, you have 7 days to reflect the Grand Master. Or you rest on the seventh day to reflect the Grand Master, okay? This entire thing is designed for you to worship the Grand Master, the prophet, okay? The cult leader, right? The guru, okay? And these are not my words. These are the words from the book. This is what the book is telling us, okay? And view with delight the properties which, let's go to page 60. Connect this vast machine. By it may we discover how the plants, that's wrong. By it may we discover how the planets move in their orbits and demonstrate their various revolutions. By it may we account for the return of seasons and the variety of scenes which each season displays to the discerning eye. Numberless worlds around us. Okay? Think Mormonism, numberless worlds around us. All formed by the same divine architect, which roll through the vast expanse and all conduct by the same unerring law of nature. A survey of nature and the observations of her beautiful proportions first determined man to imitate the divine plan and study symmetry and order. Okay? The architect began to design, and the plans which he laid down, being improved by experience and time. Okay, they're legitimately telling you, right? The plan is to improve with experience and time. What is the Mormon story? It's legitimately evolved through time, right? What has Masonry done? It has legitimately evolved through time. And we get today what we have now, right? The religious institution of Masonry is the Mormon Church. Okay? And modern day Freemasonry, I believe, is a derivative of that, because they're telling us there is no Masonry. There are no Freemasons. There is no such thing as Freemasonry. These people are recreating this stuff, right? Have produced works which are the admiration of every age. Okay, they produce writings. Okay, the lapse of time, the ruthless hand of ignorance, and the devastations of war had laid waste and destroyed many valuable monuments of antiquity on which the utmost exertions of human genius have been employed. Think of all the Indian mounds, right? This is what they're talking about, right? The Indian mounds. When they came to America, right? There were Indian mounds all over the place, and they would dig these things up. This is historical fact, right? And they couldn't explain it, right? And so the explanation was there was an ancient culture. Okay, and this is legitimate historical fact right here. This is also the Book of Mormon. Okay, historical fact. When the United States, right, they first kind of started coming here, long before Columbus, and the colonies were, situated, and stuff like that. I mean, there were people living here long before Columbus, right? Which were the 33rd Scottish Rite Masons. Okay, the Kilwinning Abbey, right? The Kilwinning Abbey was destroyed, and the Templars disappeared. Where'd they all go? All of a sudden, they end up in the U.S. Right? These people that are creating this stuff, right? And all of a sudden we have this Masonic thing happen in the New World. And it was called the New Jerusalem. Legit, historically, was called the New Jerusalem. And there's these Indian mounds all over the place. And when they dug up these Indian mounds, there's this incredible gold stuff that the modern day Indians of the day, right? Those stupid Indians, they couldn't have made this stuff. They're dumb Injuns with the J. And so the explanation of that was there was a pre-ancient culture that these Indians of today killed off. And the Indians that we have today are the remnant of those ancient Indians. That's legit, right? It's not true, but that was the explanation in the 1800s, right? The 1700s, right? So that story made its way into the Book of Mormon, right? With the Nephites and all that bullshit stuff, right? The New Jerusalem, all that shit, right? Well, the New Jerusalem is legitimately what these people, the anti-Masonic, the religious institution of Masonry, the New Jerusalem is what they are trying to recreate. Okay? They're trying to recreate Solomon's temple. Where, Mormons, is the New Jerusalem? It's in Missouri. Okay? What happened when they first went to Utah? It was not called Utah. It was not called Salt Lake City. It was not called Richmond Field or whatever, whatever, right? It was called the New Jerusalem. How do we know that? Because William Dixon, H. Bancroft, John Beadle, John Caswell, the list goes on, the list goes on. There's so many authors that are telling us this. Okay? So you must understand, there is no Mormonism at this time. This is 1827. William Morgan's book is warning us against the religious institution of Masonry. David Bernard and Solomon Southwick both call it the Church of Masonry. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to link this stuff up, right? I grew up as a Mormon, born and raised a Mormon. Okay, I apostatized at a very young age, right? But my family is very much still, to this day, involved in the church. So I'm never away from it, right? So I go to baptisms, I go to the blessings, I go to this stuff out of respect for my family, right? And so I'm never far away from Mormonism. You understand? But my own personal likes and dislikes and rabbit holes that I have gone down throughout my life and things of this sort has been this, Freemasonry. Who hasn't studied Freemasonry and the Templars? And, who hasn't gone down that rabbit hole? Okay. And so this is where I went as a child. I went down these rabbit holes. I went down this magic rabbit hole and what is magic and all that kind of stuff. And then recently, the last 3 to 5 years, I've really been getting into this stuff, right? I do not practice magic, but I absolutely respect it. Ceremonial magic, Solomonic ceremonial magic. I respect it and I understand it and I get it, right? And when you do that and you read the temple or the treaties and testaments of Solomon, you will also see that in the Bible, right? And King Solomon is all over in the Bible. I mean, that's where Masons get it, is from the Bible. That's where we get King Solomon, is from the Bible, right? So there's a very clear lineage here, okay? So you have to follow the crumb trails, right? This is a rabbit hole, congregation. The thing about this, though, this particular rabbit hole, is it's a legitimate historical, factual rabbit hole that has been like completely removed and just sillied up in modern society, because these books, these 3 books alone, just completely devastate Freemasonry and Mormonism, right? Because they're legitimately telling you there is no such thing as Freemasonry. These people are legitimately recreating something that they think is what they're calling Templars. Okay? It's a fascinating historical rabbit trail that has been totally removed from society. And I think it's incredible. And once you read it and understand it, you know, and understand the severity of what these authors are saying. See, William Morgan's book has been William Morgan has been made to be such a silly, dumb, uneducated, illiterate. Am I making sense to you, Mormons? Who else has these same exact attributes? Who else was arrested for $2 and whatever cents? Who else had a wife named Lucinda Pendleton? Right? Who else went to jail? Right? Who else was a martyr? Who else ran through the woods? Who else has a book, a 116-page book that's incomplete, that was later finished? You know, who else had a vision? Right? Who else had a vision and had to wait a period of time, right, to finish that vision? Right? Who else had ran through the woods? Who else peddled a book? Who else got 5,000 copies made? Who else? Who else? I could go on and on and on. Right? I could literally go on and on. And I get this stuff from Mormon history. This is legit Mormon history. These things that describe Joseph Smith and what he did. Okay? So why in this anti-Mormon literature is William Morgan, like something about William Morgan is in legitimately all these books? Why? There's some little clue. There's a crumb trail of William Morgan in all these books, all of them. Why? When they're specifically talking about Mormonism. Why is this anti-Masonic character? It's a valid question. Apostates, you're reading these books, so you guys are seeing these references. You legitimately are reading them for yourselves, and you're seeing these William Morgan references in these books, in these 1840s, 1830s literature that are anti-Mormon, not anti-Masonic, right? The anti-Masonic movement by now is dead. Well, it has slowed, right? So you got to connect these dots, congregation, okay? All right. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This is a series. So where we left off on page 60. Okay, so we are talking about the lapse of time, the ruthless hand of ignorance, and the devastations of war have laid waste and destroyed many valuable monuments of antiquity on which the utmost exertions of human genius have been employed. That's where we're stopping today, or right now. Give me a little while and I'm going to come back. I'm going to go and do my thing for a little bit and then I'll be back. You know, set your bell, hit the bell, because I could be back in 5 minutes. It might be 2 hours. Who knows? But so hit the bell if you want to continue. I highly recommend going back and starting from the beginning, though. This is episode 12. Okay. Page 60. So, where the next episode is going to pick up at, I will reread what I just read. I will say this is where we stopped on the last episode. This is where we picked up on this episode. Okay. So, next episode, where we start is even the Temple of Solomon, so spacious and magnificent, and constructed by so many celebrated artists, escaped not the unsparing ravages of the barbarous force. Stop. That's where we pick up. That's where we end. Apostate congregation, like and subscribe to the channel. I know a lot of you are not subscribed that are continuous watchers. Okay. Repeat viewers, right? Please subscribe to the channel so it will help our algorithms. Not being monetized really suppresses this channel. So help me get this word out by sharing the videos, telling your friends. I'm really more interested than you actually read this book. It's not very long, congregation, okay? It's 116 pages, man. You can do it. You can do it. Do it, do it, do it. You can do it. Okay, so please read the book. That's more what I'm interested in, is people actually legitimately taking the time and reading this stuff for yourself and dissecting it for yourself. Okay, because it's a massive rabbit hole. There are so many rabbit holes within rabbit holes that you could go through with this stuff. It's insane, okay? So please subscribe to the channel, share the videos, hit the bell, watch the videos all the way through. And in the words of the late, great Solomon Southwick, the ashes of Morgan will rise again. The restoration has begun. We are William Morgan. We are the Legion of Many, congregation. We are the Legion of Many. So please, I urge you all to read this stuff and spread the word. Spread the word far and wide and loud, okay? Because these people have been warning us for 200 years. And they haven't been able to, it's been forgotten about. It's been completely whitewashed. So the ashes of Morgan have risen. The ashes of Morgan have risen. And here he is, congregation. Here he is. Thank you. And we will see you on the other side.